Hello, hello, what is up, what is good? It is already the end of January 2026. I don't know if anybody else there can relate, but this month always goes like really fast for me. It does not feel like 2025 has ended. But we've already got a whole month of Shonen Jump to talk about. Now, this isn't really a total month. We only had 3 weeks that the magazine ran with New Year's holidays and things like that, and just the way that the Sundays broke down. But it was a eventful 3 weeks with 2 series ending and 1 new series beginning. We're going to talk about the new series first. It is actually somewhat relevant in my life right now. The reason this video is a few days late is because I had a bit of a medical emergency. I was actually in the hospital for a bit. That was not fun. I think I'm mostly out of the woods, knock on wood. But it did make me appreciate ever more the idea of a medical manga, because our new series indeed is Under Doctor, a new kind of battle action series with a medical twist about an extremely gifted doctor who has all of the skills and was trained to be an assassin, but instead uses those same powers to heal people instead. I really like this idea. We're actually going to start with like a few complaints and get those out of the way, and then we can talk about stuff that I liked. First off, I think this character is a deliberate tribute to Blackjack with the multicolor white and black hair. Tezuka's legendary protagonist from way back in the 70s and the 80s. But this guy's characterization is no Blackjack. Blackjack, of course, was also kind of like an underworld doctor, a doctor that didn't operate within the typical medical system. But he came across as like genuinely abrasive and scary, and part of the fun of every chapter was seeing people's initial very off-put reactions to Blackjack, who always kind of comes into the scene as if he's not really anybody's friend and charges an outrageous amount of money that he later walks back, and does all these other sorts of very kind of blunt, very aggressive type things, putting him more in league with, your Dr. Houses and stuff, that kind of gruff, harsh exterior on someone who has this medical giftedness. Whereas this guy from the start is much more of your kind of modern shonen protagonist. He's quirky, he sleeps all the time, he is a little nonchalant, he has some goofy moments, all of which belie his actual hidden talent and expertise and stuff. And that's fine, that's alright, but I just feel like the character of Blackjack is not only just much more interesting right off the jump, creates much more of a fascinating dynamic that you really want to see, the depths of his character and where are his limits, and where will he have moments of tenderness or sincerity or whatever. Here it kind of just feels like we've seen it all before. But with Blackjack, it's a character that we just don't see in shonen protagonists in general anymore. There's such an urge for likability right off the bat, which I think is kind of unfortunate. I like these sort of positive, happy comics as well, but I think if you're gonna kind of pay homage to such a legendary character, it's good to kind of carry over some of that roughness, especially given that he's got this whole backstory that we get little hints at in even the first chapter, that he was raised to be an assassin by some very harsh and brutal teacher that looks like it's probably his dad or something, and that he defied this and walks the path of a doctor instead. But we don't really see any of that kind of residual scarring or residual gruffness or whatever. I also didn't like that the medicine itself is just kind of magic. He has the ability to sense kind of weak points, parts that are hurting. He sees some sort of like aura from people, and this allows him to do kind of medical miracles, accomplishing things that would typically require surgery or medicine just by pressing key touch points. And to me, that's a lot less interesting than in Blackjack, where they actually made it like an actual medical procedural drama. I like shows like that. You know, I enjoyed watching House as a kid. I'm kind of interested in that show, The Pit, everyone is talking about. I liked The Nick from maybe 10 years or so ago. I have quite a bit of interest in the details of surgery and afflictions of the organs, and you know, that whole kind of diagnosis process of breaking down symptoms, and the genius of the character. That what makes a brilliant doctor is kind of seeing what other people couldn't see, putting the pieces together in a way that others couldn't. And I was kind of hoping for that with this medical theming, and it really wasn't much there. He diagnoses a few people just kind of like instantly, and I was sort of waiting for, you know, sort of that mystery reveal later where he picks out certain clues that he had strung together in order to make this sort of miraculous leap of faith diagnosis. But instead, no, he just has this vaguely supernatural ability. So that was quite disappointing too. There is a scene where he surgically removes some bullets from another character, and that I thought was a little better insofar as they at least make gestures to what is happening in surgery, and he doesn't do it like magically fast or whatever. He just does it very fast. And the surgeon goes, I thought that would take like 90 minutes. Instead, it only took like 40 minutes or something like that, which is, you know, remarkably unrealistically fast, but isn't magically fast. Which gave me some hope that maybe, you know, in future chapters there would be a little bit more of like a medical grounding, more into that mode of actual medical techniques and technology and medicines and stuff like that. I also just thought, you know, the plot line of this little self-contained adventure was maybe a little too simple. You know, it turns out that this guy that gets immediately very sick with food poisoning and starts experiencing a lot of gastrointestinal distress, which is in fact what I also just went through very recently, not to get too into the weeds about it because it's gross. So I'm steady sipping on some water here. All of that was just a decoy so that hijackers can take over the plane, and then our titular underdoctor character just like beats up the hijackers, and that's it. It felt like there should be kind of one more revelation. There should be one moment where he's kind of put on the back foot and he realizes that, oh, this all seemed too simple, but there was a reason this guy in particular was targeted, or, you know, oh, maybe this guy, you know, he seems just like an innocent victim, but there was something more to him. But no, it's just kind of relatively straightforward. No kind of bonus twist at the end or anything like that. And he never is really challenged. Our main doctor character is just in total control of the whole situation from beginning to end. Which, again, is all right, but there could be more. I think we're making protagonists too powerful these days. We need somebody that we can kind of like root for some more, I think. So yeah, those are kind of three things that rubbed me the wrong way about it, that made me a little skeptical about it. But aside from that, I quite liked it. I thought the art style was very cool. I thought the action scenes, not like the best I've ever seen, but had some interesting components. I like that he fights by, you know, targeting these specific pressure points. I think the premise is great. An underworld doctor, you know, obviously it's going to be hard to top Blackjack or some other classics in this genre, but it's a classic genre for a reason. I think it's ripe for all sorts of both episodic stories and then larger arcs. I'm really curious to see where it goes from here. I have high hopes for the series. It's not something that I feel like we've seen in Jump in quite a while, this sort of theming, or I'm just kind of hoping for stories that aren't resolved with a fight scene as well, where the challenge is in doing the medicine, and the happy ending is just that the character is cured of whatever affliction. So yeah, I don't know. We'll give it an A. I think it is a very solid start. Only one chapter this month, of course. We're getting 2 more series in the next 2 issues, which is very exciting. I don't know if that means that one more series is going to end, or if we're just going to go up one series. I know Hunter x Hunter is coming back at some point, possibly soon as well. There's a large batch of chapters that, as far as I know, are totally ready to go. So the magazine could get kind of crowded in the near future if we don't get some more cuts. At the same time, besides the 2 series that did just get cut, I'm not sure what exactly is on the chopping block per se. But let's talk about those next, the 2 series that met their unfortunate ending, and I do really mean unfortunate. I liked both of these quite a bit. Starting with Oter of the Flame. As I was saying last month, they clearly got told, hey, wrap it up, shift gears, it's time to bring this to a conclusion. And they did by just speedrunning everything, having the big evil king that they had already only shown to us like 2 chapters previous as a possible threat. He just shows up. And this whole kind of battling over control of the spirits thing is resolved in what feels like a deliberately jokey anticlimax, where both the Ice King and Oter are saying, the Ice King is saying, well, I need to control all 5 spirits for any hope of beating the evil king. And Oter goes, how about we just split them like 2-3? And then they do, and they get powered up, and they've got some pretty awesome looking endgame battle designs. Then they have the final battle, they do their big combo attack. The evil king is defeated, the Ice King is like spared. It turns out that girl they were traveling with that we knew was some sort of royalty is in fact like head of all human civilization, it seems. The pirate spirit goes away. Her job is done. She slumbers again once more. There's kind of a, tearful departing scene. And then they have a meal, and it's nice. I don't know. It's a pleasant ending. What else could it be? They kind of powered through everything, but they were able to hit a lot of the high notes, I think, which are just the awesome battle scenes and choreography and the very unique kind of Viking-esque, but also spiritual, supernatural, superpowered designs. Lots of cool stuff there that I think they were able to kind of flare up one last time for the big finale. I don't know. I enjoyed this series all right the whole way through. I think it had a lot of ingredients in place to be something special. Like I said, that kind of unique setting, a very unique art style. The battle scenes I thought were done in a very cool way. But the whole time I was reading it, there was just as many points where I was like frustrated. Like, you talk about putting the cart before the horse. Here it's like they put the decals on the ground and then started assembling the cart, and they hadn't even called for the horse. Just doing a lot of weird stuff out of order, spending way too long belaboring parts that I don't really see why anybody would get excited over. Kind of doing your world building in an overly ambitious, haphazard way. Having some kind of little episodic adventures, which are good to kind of just set the tone and set the pace of the series and start, building your way up from those to longer arcs, but never really bringing it together, always feeling a little too frantic, and I think best exemplified by, like, always just doing revelations, like, in the wrong order. Like, rather than having some sort of revelation accompany a climax, they would just be like, the fire spirit used to fight with the old warrior of the flame, and so she's traumatized because he died, and it was kind of like she blames herself. Oh, okay, now I'm gonna go into, like, my mind palace and communicate with her. And then she just kind of, like, says the same thing. And it's like, that was supposed to be, like, the big emotional downbeat, but you just, like, told us. It's like, they always say show, don't tell. Here it's just, like, tell, and then later tell. So yeah, a lot of little frustrating decisions like that I think really kneecapped it from getting any sort of serious popularity. I was hoping that it could just sort of survive as, like, a mid-carter for quite a while, because I do think this is a story that should have grown into itself, and once it was working on a bigger scale with bigger arcs, bigger forces on each side, where it wasn't as capable of getting in its own way, and it's just going to be like all right, now we got some like awesome fight scenes and lore and world building and crazy creatures to battle against. That's when I think it could have hit its stride, and it's too bad that it didn't really quite get to that point before it was kind of told to slam down on the accelerator. So we'll give it an A. I think it is what it is. I was very, very excited about it when it started because it was the first set in a total fantasy world series we'd seen in a little while, not since Ichi the Witch. But now Ichi the Witch has like really taken off. It's becoming one of the new pillars of Jump. So I feel like that sort of high fantasy is well represented. But this could have been good. This could have been good. Alas, we say goodbye to Oter. And this, even sadder, is the end of Harukaze Mound. This one I was really, really enjoying. I think right from the jump, it showed that it had a lot of the key understandings of what I think makes great sports shonen, in that it cared about the actual tactics and physics and mechanics of baseball right off the bat, and was very eager to introduce you to this kind of dynamic rock, paper, scissors duel between the pitcher and the batter, and then the role of the catcher as well, and suggesting pitches and the synchronicity and understanding that they had to have. All of these things I think are great foundations to build this kind of like psychological sports shonen. And they kind of had it all. I don't know if I can pinpoint exactly where it all fell apart. They had the right sort of ambitions. They were setting up, rival schools for them to go against. They had this whole idea that he was going to build out an arsenal of different pitches that he could rotate between. And they had a great, scene early on of him adding a new pitch to its arsenal. I think in the end, this sort of revealed to me the limits of baseball as a sport for sports shonen. There have been, of course, very successful baseball manga in the past. But all of those, I think, crucially, had an element of character drama above and beyond the baseball. And although I longed for like a pure sports shonen, one that didn't really focus too much on stuff outside of the games, one that didn't really need like really heightened dramatic elements to give importance to the games and things like that. I think with a sport like baseball, if you strip all of that aside, you lose something of kind of like a physical struggle in the game itself. It's just a little too segmented. It's a little too chunked, and just the feeling of, plays and strikeouts and pop flies that get caught and stuff. They don't really have the same tension as a sport where people are coming at each other simultaneously, and a lot of those dramas can play out in the multitude of PvP things, whereas here it's like kind of as soon as the ball leaves the hand of the pitcher, you're giving it up to God, right? So I don't know. I think they did a lot correct, but I think the tone started to work against them. To have this very kind of like bright, sunny spring breeze tone where, nobody is an asshole. Everybody's kind of emotionally mature and stable. Everybody's working for their best. I did really like it, but I think it started to make the series feel a little flat. That's my best guess. I don't know. Here we saw the finale, and I think it was like a decent finale. They had also incorporated one other piece of advice that I was shouting into the void that I'm sure was received from somewhere else as well. If you're going to have all these emotionally stable characters having reasonable conversations and stuff, can we at least have some like freaks too? Can we at least have some people that are a little more abnormal? Can we get some stranger silhouettes in the mix, something that makes the cast a little more exciting to look at instead of just like a bunch of dudes? And they did, and this run of chapters started with the final showdown with Moko-tan, just this big brute who had an unexpectedly cutesy side, a classic. He can't figure out how to defeat it. Sorry, that's really rude. Defeat his batting, I guess, because he's able to just hit absolutely everything. He instead uses the Harukaze pitch, the spring breeze pitch, It's a shockingly slow Ephus-style pitch, and it fakes him out, and it works. And I'm sure they had saved that for like a much more crucial climax. You know, the title drop maneuver. It would have gone hella hard. But I'm glad they found an opportunity to do it, even with this like super truncated, super abbreviated finale. Then they start the final chapter being like, okay, they won, and that was the trigger. Then they started winning and winning and winning. And I didn't know this was the last chapter. I didn't know. I somehow had missed any sort of announcement or anything of that. Often I see these sorts of things on Twitter. But no, I started seeing that they were just summarizing like 8 other games on their entire road to Koishan. And then it's just like, and now they're at Koishan playing. It's their dream come true. Both pitchers, both brothers, both twins playing in the same game. And I was like, ah, crap, it's ending. I knew that it must be ending soon because they were speedrunning up to the final game. But then I thought, okay, maybe we'll have a couple chapters devoted to this final game at Koishan. And if they manage to right the ship, if they manage to start getting attention, they pivot out. Hey, that was just first year. We're going to try even harder next year. See you back again at Koishan or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, this extremely sped run finale. We just get a whole bunch of montage shots of the game. They talk about it's their dream again. We had been treated to a little bit more of their upbringing, you know, missing out on their mother and stuff. That was quite touching, so I think they were able to kind of like finally bring home that one kind of core emotional story of the twins wanting to play together and, you know, the sadness they've been through and baseball bringing them together and blah, 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 blah. Like, there was payoffs, there was nice stuff like that, but just too little too late, you know? All just being slapped together in one chapter because they unfortunately met the axe. So yeah, our quest for the next iShield 21 continues. I'm sure for the Jump editors, they think of it more as the quest for the next Haikyuu, but whatever. This had a lot of the chops, couldn't quite bring it together. Needed a bit more of an edge, a bit more of an X factor, I think. But it is what it is. Lovely series. We'll give it an A+ for the finale. And I'm actually going to pause and get, I don't know, I'm going to check my messages and stuff, but I'll be back in a sec. I don't know why I say this. It's the whole point of pausing the recording. Alright, we're back. Now let's talk about Hima-ten. What happened in Hima-ten this month? I have to consult my notes. They had some nice stuff. It kind of seems like Hima-ten is heading to the end game as well. It's a lot of series that feel like they might end soon. A lot of series that I know for sure will end soon. This is going to be a rather large fluctuation point for Jump, I think. Because here, it seems like they have taken the step that a lot of these sort of harem rom-coms do, where they're gearing up for the ending, and the main character reestablishes that they are going to choose the girl you thought they were going to choose the entire time. It feels unnecessary. It feels maybe like a kick in the face to people that were cheering for some of the other characters, but I think it is also a good opportunity to just have some of the more like sentimental scenes of the series, an opportunity to, you know, really reinforce kind of that core dynamic of the two leads. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, because this also reignited the Himarine offensive. The titular character also making her charge, the only one else who has any sort of shot. But yeah, this was mostly focused on his relationship with Honoka. This whole deal of the class trip that they weren't able to go on. They try to make it happen again, but then this time she's sick instead of he's sick, and he stays back to take care of her. Nice. And then another major plot development, Himarine makes him quit as her cleaner so that she can pursue him wholeheartedly, knowing that it would be kind of weird and creepy to ask him out while he's working for her. So yeah, I don't know. I think they definitely are setting this up to be kind of like the end game little arc here. She basically gives him 1 month, his final month as her cleaner. for her to kind of get her feelings in order. I don't know what the heck will happen with Kana. I don't think Kana appeared at all this month. She kind of had her shot, and, you know, alas. But I actually thought this stuff was pretty solid emotionally. It really respected the characters. It really leaned into the differences between Himurine and Honoka as characters, which I liked. It felt cute. It felt secure, you know. They didn't feel like they were making big swings with fan service or other nonsense, forced drama, misunderstandings, the more cliche harem rom-com stuff that you bust out to kind of try to right the sinking ship. Instead, it does kind of feel like they are prepared for it to end. They're planning for a solid ending. They're not gonna, you know, try to drag this out to like a Nisekoi type situation where it's just endless adventures in perpetuity and more characters getting introduced, which I can really respect. I think this series, although it had some stupid moments, managed to fight off the stupid disease quite admirably overall, and was overall quite pleasant. And I just really hope they can stick the landing, you know? Not back out, not kind of dissuade from this built-up momentum, lean into some of these more difficult moments where he really realizes that he has to choose, have some good confession scenes, and just have like a definitive ending where he asks her out and she says yes, and then we move on. Now, you might think that I'm already setting the bar too low. Why not have the series continue while they're both dating? That's all the rage now in rom-coms, to have a kind of a true ending where they've been dating for a while and then other progress happens. And that's just never going to happen. Sorry. As much as I would like that, as much as it's been great in Blue Box, as much as so many other kind of modern rom-coms do that sort of pattern now, where it's not confess and then end, but confess and now kind of part two begins. I just don't think that's what's going to be happening here. I don't know. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I think the series is actually like decently popular, decently well liked among Japanese readers. The tankobon's selling pretty well. So maybe they will actually continue in that mode, but I would be very, very surprised. I also kind of just think that someone Hertz is eating its lunch right now. This is such a classic harem rom-com. A genre that I think has really sort of fallen out of vogue, and basically is now being competed with against the new species of 1v1 rom-com, which is like crushing it. Like, Someone Hurts is succeeding to a level that I never ever would have imagined. But in retrospect, does kind of make sense because it's a popular genre elsewhere, and, you know, why not succeed in Jump as well? But yeah, we'll give it an A- for the month. I really enjoyed this stuff. Like I said, there's very little stupid things. Instead, it just was kind and respectful to the characters, and made me feel like they were gonna bring about a very satisfying ending. Whoa, ho, ho, ho. Talking about satisfying endings, oh my gosh. I cannot get over how much I am loving the finale of the Elusive Samurai. This is not my all-time favorite Masui series. You know, I like Ass Class more. I don't think this is like a 10 out of 10 across the board series or anything like that. But all of the moves they've been making with this ending have really just blown me away in its creativity, in its surprisingness, in its poeticness, in the beauty of it, in the sentimentality of it, in the grandness of it, in the way that it blends all of the series' strong points and action and characterization and comedy all into one just galloping troika of amazing events and beautiful storytelling and great little character moments. And I really can't praise it enough. I thought the high watermark was going to be the battle against the evil god, which broke into a ton of like insane fourth wall breaking, direct address to the reader, insane kind of philosophical contemplation of what is history, what is fiction? What is our relationship to the past? Are we trapped in endless cycles of violence because of our continued dehumanization of those that have died in war before us? Really deep stuff, while at the same time just being so comically absurd. I thought that was going to be as good as it gets. And then the insane, overwhelming sentimentality of the Daydream arrow that flies through the entire run of the history of this series, bringing together all of these nostalgic moments that we have for the series itself. I thought that was going to be the high watermark, but no, this kind of like coda, this final settling of affairs between Tokiyuki and Takeuji, which at first I didn't really even think was going to happen. I thought it was going to end in so many other ways before this, which, you know, I've remained deliberately ignorant of the real history that the series is sort of reinterpreting. So I didn't really know that this kind of final, you know, closure is actually, you know, something that we had been promised with this entire story. But no, this is now the high watermark, and what a tsunami of a high watermark it is. Just this feeling of resignation to die, the negotiations, the poem that Takeuji leaves behind, which is our only clue as to his interior world, the way that the story then converges with history in a very metatextual way, kind of signifying, okay, we've had our fun with the concept of this evil god, but let's see how it actually closed out in the annals of history. The final surprise as well of breaking free from the execution site, spending his last moments in play, in playing this final game of tag, dying of mishap or illness instead of execution in order to escape the contract that he had signed himself into, where he offered up his head in exchange for the safety of his clan. The frolic and the grace and the joy, not just expressed in this storytelling, but just in the kineticism of the panels and this iconic way that Tokiyuki moves and eludes his pursuers. And oh my god, man, it's just so good. I can't overstate how much this ending has impressed me. I'm really curious to see, like, can it go somewhere from here? I feel like if this really was going to end in the next few chapters, as it is suggesting it will, with Tokiyuki dying and there nothing more to be said, I think that I would have seen some sort of announcements, you know, we're heading into the final 3 chapters, things like that. Typically, if it's a series that's run this long, they do afford them, you know, the measure of a countdown to prepare people, but no such countdown has been initiated. So I think the door is still open to that after, you know, that insane postmodern barrage and now this beautiful poetic touch of history, we could go in some other totally absurd, other incomprehensible direction. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what the history books suggest. I don't know what the Jump editorial team suggests. As I say, it feels like a lot of stuff is like ending in the near future. If they're more than happy for them to take a little victory lap and do something crazy, and I don't know, maybe have Kuro-sensei show up. I don't fucking know. You can do whatever you want. The series has truly proven that. We're gonna give it, and it's very rare, I'm gonna give some weight to this, a P-. The peak designation, which so far I have only awarded to One Piece, and One Piece has only received it a few times. Elusive Samurai steps up to that tier. It's peak, baby. It's truly peak. P-. Can't wait to see what's next. This is what's there to beat in manga for 2026, I gotta say. We're starting the year off strong. You know, I often think that Jump must have its own equivalent of Sweeps Week. Sweeps Week, of course, is when they sweep through all the Nielsen families, which are the TVs in America that are equipped to report back to the Nielsen company of what was being watched. and this is how they understand how popular different TV shows are, before, you know, the advent of streaming and all of this stuff. So Sweeps Week was when they knew they were going to be judged, and so they would bust out all of their best material across like every show to just try to get as many audiences in on that week as possible. I feel like January in Jump is sort of a similar thing, because there's so few chapters, because a lot of people are on holiday, and what else are they going to do? Might as well buy Shonen Jump and give it a read. Because I think there's people that at the beginning of the year will use that as an opportunity to pick up new series or to drop series that they are kind of bored of. It really feels like, and this is going off of a whopping 2 years of reading the magazine with this depth, that everybody kind of brings their A game, and it takes some kind of wild swings during January. So, yeah, I think this is the high watermark. This is the bar to beat. This was phenomenal. Okay. I'm gonna pause again. Alright, now let's talk about Ichi the Witch. Had a very interesting month. Again, Sweeps Week. Some crazy stuff happening here. It's moving on multiple fronts simultaneously and building up to crazy climaxes in each of them. Starting with a substantial look at Descara's past. The tragedy of her little brother who got wiped out by the world hater Magic. You know, this obviously very motivates a lot of the stuff that she's doing now. I like that it was pretty simple, but it touched on something that I thought was kind of lurking in the background of the world building of this series. This idea that only women can be witches, and that Ichi is this, like, once in a lifetime anomaly, once in a forever anomaly that nobody can get their head around. You know, so far this has just kind of been accepted as a fact, and then we had Gokuraku as a character that was like trying to come up with ways that he could harvest the power of magic and use magic on his side, even though he wasn't a witch. Now we're seeing kind of like another exploration of that topic, one that I wasn't really sure if they were going to touch on, which is just like intense gender dysphoria feelings of Dessa's little brother who really, 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 really wants to be a witch and is going so far as to wish that he was born a woman, you know, not just wishing that men could be witches, but wishing that he was a woman insofar as that would allow him to be a witch. That's pretty interesting. They didn't get, you know, really into the transness of it all, perhaps. That I don't think is really going to be on the menu, per se. But I did kind of find it interesting that they touched upon that feeling, that there would be characters like that out there that would start to feel a certain type of way about their gender because they're not able to wield magic the way they want to. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, too, this whole assault by the reverser magic that so far Des was handling pretty easily. You know, she was able to rationalize having to kill human-looking things. But then when her brother appears, she is forced to stop her assault. She is rocked to the core by that, is unable to harm something that has the appearance of her brother. It's pretty cliche, but, you know, this is a cliche for a reason. I'm not really sure where it's going to go from here. I think it would be very odd to have that as kind of a cliffhanger, that she succumbs to this psychological attack, is swarmed by other zombies, and then the next time we see her, she's like, nah, never mind, and whoosh, wipes them all out. So I think there's going to be some sort of other X factor in play. Something else is going to intervene here. Maybe our different plot lines will intersect again to kind of get her out of this crisis. Meanwhile, they're battling against the Octobomb, the prophecy magic, using its powers to see into the near future to figure out when it is safe to kind of launch a more substantial counterattack. I often find these sorts of like seeing the future during a fight shticks to be a little tedious because it just sort of, I think, robs a feeling of like immediacy in action when it's just kind of like this, instead of it being like did this attack land? How much did it hurt? Are we dealing damage? Are we strong enough? It becomes a question of like, oh, well, when you foresaw that, did it seem like you were foreseeing a fatal blow? Or if you look a little further, do I get back up? Is this one of your prophecies that's avoidable or unavoidable? You know, it just kind of starts to litigate instead the mechanics of the prophecy thing. But here they did a pretty interesting variation, which is basically just he needs 5 seconds of not getting attacked in order to prepare his counterattack. And so the prophecy magic's goal is just to find 5 seconds of relative safety, 5 seconds where he's not under immediate assault, and signal that to him as soon as those 5 seconds are about to occur. And you could still kind of litigate the mechanics of prophecy and stuff, and there's a lot of odd questions that spill out, but they didn't focus on those things and instead just made it like a very like direct, snappy, action-packed thing of trying to find those 5 seconds and just constantly evaluating each attack and seeing how much safety they have in it. It almost felt like a fighting game, you know? Like, trying to figure out the frame data of a move as you're fighting to see where you can actually, like, have the chance to do your install or whatever. I don't know. There's no, like, great analogy, but it had that same kind of, like, mechanical, precise, trying to judge the situation for a very clear objective, which I really liked. Then, Minerva, the partner of the Chrono Magic, goes into labor. The Octobomb unleashes one kind of secret, hidden, unable to be prophesized, I guess, attack. She gets, like, stabbed right through the abdomen. Looks bad. They didn't shy away from making it look, like, pretty grim, pretty grisly, pretty gory. It looks like that kid is toast. But we're not gonna find out for a while because we segue into a flashback of how Minerva and the Chrono Weaver magic met, which, you know, is something that I had been looking forward to seeing, and it seems like something that's going to be pretty crucial to kind of like the emotional core of this whole arc. You know, we're definitely meant to sympathize with these characters. We ought to know kind of the story behind them so that we can really feel the magnitude of what they're going through. Which is why I'm kind of surprised like we didn't see this earlier, you know? Why now? Why do the classic Oda fake out of like a big flashback right at the moment of climax, right when the baby is supposed to be coming out and she gets stabbed and everything's in crises. Very bizarre, but you know, I like that kind of swerve punch too. I like getting crossed up like that and faked out and surprised. So that's interesting. And I think they'll do a good job with the story. Like, I think it's such an odd idea to have this as a plot line, a human and magic having a child, and to kind of situate it where they did, where the other antagonist really has not much to do with it, but still trying to like coincide those plot lines. There must be some reason for it. There must be something really cooking here, I think. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. But man, I kind of felt like I was getting flicked. They were flicking me when they just swerved out of the climax of that, the resolution, and instead dumped us in a flashback. So we'll see. Okay, we'll give it an A+ for the month, though. I really like these chapters. Now let's talk about Nue's Exorcist. Actually started not bad. I liked the stuff with the Soranaki backstory. I also liked this whole motive of his that he wants to change and evolve, that none of the other Hyo are capable of that, and then he sees Nue do this and establish new relationships with humans and live this entirely different type of life. That he wants that for himself, and that all of his villainy and chaos and strangeness and stuff is all just in service of trying to provoke some sort of change within himself. I thought that was actually kind of interesting. That's an interesting villain motive. I think that is written in a way that it can lead to a lot of good plot lines and stuff, but after that, man, it's like I just can't understand what the fuck is up with this chapter structuring. I swear it's written as if it's volumes of a light novel where you need to have kind of like enough of a variety to be a complete experience if you just bought it by itself, and also always have a hook into the next thing. Not a cliffhanger per se, but certainly not a resolution, but instead just like the first part of the next thing awkwardly shoved into that thing. So we can't just have a fairly interesting story about Soranaki that sort of ends with this kind of character revelation and leaves us wondering, okay, if that's what his motive is, you know, how are we going to come to a resolution with this guy? Will he, in fact, achieve his goals and change and evolve? Could he potentially be a good guy? Could he become like Nue? You know, what other schemes does he have? No. We have to do that and then speedrun the entire setup of a new thing where they're going to go to a resort and they have to battle the resort leaders like it's freaking Pokemon. So it becomes a beach chapter, and then, of course, everybody has to do Bikini Sand fan service, of course. And then we get another confession right at the start of the next chapter after that, because we can't just, like, sit with one concept for long enough. You have to start spamming other buttons on the keyboard, and one of the ones that, you know, is always at the ready is another girl confesses. We're up to, like, 6 now. And it's a harem series, so what do I expect? But I think I at least expect a little more, like, dignity to the characters. Like, why the hell is she so smitten with him? It doesn't make any goddamn sense. And then why are we just plunged into so many fan service scenes with her immediately, falling out of her bikini and getting incidentally groped? Just the lamest type of fan service where the girl character is not really empowered at all. Neither is the boy character. It's all just sort of happy accidents where he's literally like tripping and stumbling and ripping off her bikini top or grabbing her boobs. Again, just like a pathetic fallacy where, not fallacy, a pathetic fantasy where, you know, the MC can't really be aspirational because that's too challenging for the readers. So instead it's like, okay, look, this guy's just as much of a dumb schmuck as you. He can't gather the courage or conviction to look a woman in the eye, basically. And yet everybody is falling over to confess to him. And then even when he doesn't have the courage or conviction to say yes to any of those, he still manages to make it to second base just through his own clumsiness. Now there's a hero for you, dear reader. Really, really stupid stuff. Stupid arc structure, too, of having to go to all the different resort areas to, like, battle people or whatever. Then it actually manages to get even worse than that, because they really kind of confront Gakuroku about, hey, why the hell aren't you responding to anybody's feelings? You keep saying, well, I want to take responsibility and take them seriously and not just give a frivolous answer or whatever, but, like, what the hell does that mean? Don't you realize that that's just as rude to just keep coming and hawing or whatever as more and more girls just line up to confess to you? And then she gives this explanation where she, like, shoves his hand onto her boob and is like, look, my heart is beating. Your heart is beating too. You're, like, really intense in this moment. You're flustered and you're freaked out. And that's because you have feelings for me. If you didn't love me, why would you feel so flustered? And I think this is, like, genuinely damaging rhetoric. I think this is actually meant to be presented as some sort of, like, epiphany for Gakuroku and just, like, a life lesson that kind of speaks to the human condition or whatever. But to me, it's basically saying, like, being in love with someone and being horny are the same thing. And I think that's actually, like, a dangerous message, man. I think that's, like, a damaging message. That if you happen to get into any sort of, like, quasi-intimate scenario with anyone for any circumstance, not even, like, intimate per se, but just a scenario where somebody is, like, making physical contact with you, or you see a lot of their skin, or you see a lot of their breasts or genitals or whatever, or you inadvertently touch them for whatever reason, if your heart starts racing and you start to feel a rush of blood to your head and maybe your penis too, that's as good as love. That's what love means. That's the only thing you need to see to know that you have strong and sincere feelings for whoever this person is. Even if it's just some random ass girl in the subway who doesn't have a lot of space to maneuver and in trying to get to her seat brushes up against you. Guess what, babe? You're my soulmate. I think this is going to, at best, just bounce off the readers' heads as meaningless dialogue that's happening during a groping scene. That is the best case scenario, that this is just scribbles on the page that I'm paying more attention to than every Japanese teenage boy. I think the middle ground is that a lot of people are going to start getting way too presumptuous of their feelings just because they managed to get, you know, a peek at somebody's panties and got really excited about it, that means that that person is actually someone that they ought to form some sort of greater emotional and intimate romantic connection to. Which is obviously not good. You can't just be flying off the handle like that. These things should evolve from friendship and mutual interest and actual time spent together, not just mindless titillation and arousal, right? I'm not saying that's not a component. I'm not saying you shouldn't be sexually attracted to the people that you're with, obviously. But I'm saying you're putting the cart before the horse. You're putting the dick before the horse. You're thinking with the wrong part of the body. And this manga is basically saying, okay, if you can't sort out your feelings, just listen to your dick. And reconceiving it as the heart. And saying, well, really, it's your heart. Listen to your heart. Isn't your heart beating fast? Bro, your heart's beating fast because you're feeling up a boob. And because you're a virgin and you don't know what the hell's going on. And then I think worst case scenario, this is going to justify some like really disgusting kind of like post hoc rationalizations of straight up sexual assault and stuff. Basically saying, if I touch your boob and my heart races, that's a sign of pure love. Well, great. That gives me carte blanche to go around groping people, right? Because, like, guess what? I'm only doing it because you're my soulmate. Like, I'm only doing it because clearly I have such deep and meaningful feelings for you. Horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. I'm definitely like the friend that's too woke on this one or whatever. I'm sure anybody listening to this is, part of you at least is rolling your eyes and being like, come on, it's not that serious. It's just your typical fan service rom-com slop. And it is, but I really don't like this sort of messaging. Like, I just straight up don't like it. And if I'm taking it too seriously, it's because maybe I'm just trying to find rationalizations for the fact that I don't like it this much being like some grand signifier or something of something immensely problematic or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just stupid. But it is at the very least like very, very stupid. And I just like it for being that stupid. But then it gets stupider. And suddenly we see a visual of Gakuroku's heart. And it begins to like crack. And it's like he's having some sort of awakening. Where up until now, I guess, all of those other experiences he had with all of those other girls. You know, the girl that got over the heartbreak of her dead fiancé because of him, or the girl who he basically like saved from a life of torture and servitude from her tyrannical family, or the girl who loved him so much that she went against her mother and defied him or defied her and then had a mock wedding ceremony with him just to bait her out. None of these things, his like adopted sister, I don't fucking remember all of them, but so many girls having all these like insane emotional, extremely high stakes dramatic stories where he is like the hero and then they profess their undying gratitude and how special he was. None of those conjured up this image of a cracking heart. It's grabbing the huge tit. That did it. That's the moment. That's when he really understood. Wow, I may be able to love a woman. Fucking stupid. And then to get even stupider, it's like that wasn't just like an image within his mind. That was like something that now has appeared in reality and is like sitting on the table. Something that wasn't very clear to me, and then the villain shows up, and now they're gonna do a fight. But yeah, I was very pissed off about all this. It started strong too. Like I said, I like that sort of Nikki stuff. it felt like its story, you know, it felt like there was something there, but they just moved in so many awful directions after that. I just think the action of this series is like mid. It's cluttered, it's like deranged, but it has some interesting, unique visual aspects, I suppose. The world building of this series is like strange and disjoint and doesn't really inspire much of the imagination, but it has its moments, you know. Sometimes they kind of delve into the lore a little bit more of all the Hyo and things that happened in ancient times, and you're like, okay, that could be kind of interesting. But the romance of this series, you know, not just the fan service, but the what we could call a romantic plot of the characters trying to get a hold of their feelings for one another and grow their intimacy towards one another, is totally irredeemable trash. It's like offensively bad. And that's where this breaks away from any other generic battle shonen series or generic harem rom-com for me, is just how like misanthropic the series' take on romance is, where it really doesn't seem to come from like a human being at all, but instead just sort of like some gooner bot. Give it a D. Just for the strength of the beginning of the month. It went very quickly downhill from there. Okay, what's next though? What's next? Something better. Oh yes, me and Roboco. What a great cover. Riffing on good old Akane-banashi. Love it, love it, love it. Fun one where they're trying to prevent Bondo from reading Jump. He's like prohibited from reading Jump. So he comes up with more and more elaborate ways to read it, like having it printed on the ground, like the big lithogryphs in South America, and then skydiving so he can read it as it's skydiving, or having it tattooed on his friends' bodies, so it's like a prison break joke that they go to the bathhouse and then he can read them. Just silly, good escalation, you know. This is the bread and butter of this series. I like that it has the big Jump focus. I think it's very funny that every time they show a little page of what he's trying to read, it is just earlier pages of the very chapter that we are reading. That was a good little mind twistiness thing. And then a multi-chapter arc, a 2-chapter arc of Bondo having Jump-fluenza, where he has read too much Weekly Shonen Jump and he is going to die. Me too, brother! Me too! I am also going to succumb to Jump-fluenza. Maybe that's why I was so goddamn sick earlier this week, and possibly still. Let's have some water. Doctors couldn't cure me, man. Came in, said I got bad abdominal pain. I'm not going to show the thing because I'll dox myself, but on my discharge papers it said diagnosis, abdominal pain. Abdominal pain. I had abdominal pain going in, abdominal pain coming out. It's not too bad right now, though. At any rate, they have to go collect ingredients to cure Bondo's Jump-fluenza. And here it becomes like a very full-fledged Toriko parody. A prolonged Toriko parody going beat for beat with stuff from like Toriko fight scenes. They fight a monster that's straight out of Toriko. Lots and lots of little good gags here. I love this mode of like parodying battle shonen with a battle scene, doing like beat by beat bokeh Tsukomi stuff with absurd things happening during the battle, but still kind of like following the structure of a battle too, especially like Toriko, which had such classic like human versus monster battles. I really liked it. I love Toriko too, but it's bizarre to me that they'd have such a substantial Toriko parody, dude. Toriko ended like over 10 years ago, right? Or no, wait, when did Toriko end? I don't know. I'm gonna look it up. Now I'm curious. I want to say it ended like 2015 or something. So like who reading Jump? Who reading specifically me and Roboco right now? Which is like a little series for kids. Yeah, it ended in 2016, so it's almost 10 years since Toriko ended. How many kids reading Roboco right now know what the hell Toriko is? It's bizarre. It's very bizarre to me. Anyways, this was all good stuff. We'll give it an A+ for the month. Next, let's talk about Kagurabachi, which was pretty freaking sweet this month as well. Sweeps, baby, sweeps. Battling more against the Sword Master. The Sword Master is able to take out Samura. Samura's self-healing ability is not able to keep up. Samura instead diverting his healing ability to Chihiro, so Chihiro can have the best chance of beating down the Sword Master. Find out that it's his mom's brother. The N-ten, of course, was built from the ground up to counter the Shueisha. Is that what it's called? No, that's the publisher. What's it called? The sword. Well, whatever. The Malediction sword. They have what I think is definitely like supposed to be the highest power level battle seen in the series so far. And it shifts into almost kind of like the JJK type mode, where it's like both battling and then like kind of narrative breaks to explain the magnitude of what's happening. And I think they executed on this really, really well. I think that's kind of a hard mode to do, where it doesn't seem tedious, where it still kind of feels like it has some flow and choreography in and out of these big attacks that are almost like the world stops for you to kind of recognize the extent of what's happening. And then Chihiro just fucking dies. Happy chapter 108. He has gone through the 108 trials, and now he is off to Transcendentance and Nirvana. He has escaped Samsara. No, just kidding. Of course, Samura is able to channel in the last bit of his life-restoring power. It seems like he sacrifices himself in doing so to revive Chihiro one more time. It's interesting here because doesn't this seem like the end of the series? Am I crazy? We've been set up from the start that there's, you know, 7 enchanted blades, 7 enchanted bladesmiths, and this is the biggest and scariest one of them all, and he caused the malediction, and he's the one that led to the sealing away of the enchanted blades and the creation of the N-ten and Chihiro's whole quest. And the evil organization that was trying to wield the blades for their own power has basically just sacked its leader, Jura, in order to bring the Sword Master back to life, sort of. Whatever, he's out, and he's fighting. What more can happen after this? Isn't this the end game? And they did kind of, like, hint that there was an off-ramp. Where Mr. Warperman, I can't think of his name, sorry, is like, okay, I'm gonna gather up all of the strongest people we have left on our side. Let's get the fuck out of here. And then we're gonna kind of like rally together and prepare a counterattack against this guy. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's like the big final arc. And maybe there's kind of a twist that emerges from that leads to an off-ramp into even more adventures. But no, it's like Chihiro comes back and the N-ten comes back and then they keep fighting. So it really does feel like the end game. And that doesn't feel correct at all, because this is like one of the pillars of Jump right now. It's insanely popular. It hasn't even gotten an anime yet. We're not even close to the ceiling of its popularity. Dude was getting write-ups in the freaking New York Times and stuff. Are they really going to let it end? Are they really going to let it end? Is it going to be like Crow and Bakuman? And Hokazono-sensei is like, no, I'm ending it. I'm using the power that you granted me for making it 100 chapters. And I'm going to end my own series. It's, I guess, spoilers for Bakuman, but that's something he does. It's pretty cool. I don't know, man. I don't really know where it's going to go from here. It's all very odd to me. I think they got to be very careful in maneuvering from this to another arc, because all of their world building and the stakes escalation and the table setting was all pointing to this particular showdown. Like, there's not that much left that they could invoke after this. But if this is it, they're going out on a high note. It's pretty freaking sweet. Very intense stuff. I love the high level battling. I love this sort of narrative interlude and stuff. We're gonna go to an S-. Just very, very solid the whole month. Sweeps, baby. They're going hard. Speaking of going hard, speaking of top level battles intercut with narration and stuff, We got more JJK Modulo, which was basically just all fighting this month. Tsusugiri versus Maru. Rika returns. That was very exciting. The whole end of JJK, and you can go back to my old videos talking about JJK when it was still running. I was like, I think Rika's gonna show up again, and she's gonna get pissed off that Yuta's in, like, the wrong body. And then they're gonna have, like, yet another enemy or something. But no, Rika doesn't really get a crazy payoff right at the end of main JJK. So it was cool that that came back. Another card that they hesitated to play for a very long time, but comes out in this battle against Mura. Mura doing all these really crazy things too. The way they have the aliens fight, I think, is unique in an interesting way, that they're using stuff that it feels kind of dimensionally different from cursed techniques we'd seen in the main series, but it's still kind of recognizable as, like, JJK fighting, like, the same kind of summoning up of not exactly domains, but other territorial influence things, like Maru suddenly kind of being in this strange forest cave thing. Dabura having this kind of mental awakening moment where he recognizes the need to fight in this scenario, that this is the first time in his life that he actually needs to fight or else he will lose and die. That was pretty cool too. This was expressed, I think, through some pretty cool, like, character moments, just like introspection, bringing back the whole alien backstory in an interesting way. But then also just like Kino scenes where he pictures that he's dancing with his opponent and recognizing the joy of battle and stuff too. Very poetic in a way, while also being, like, very intense, very Kino. They take a step back for some reactions and discussions of the humans watching this, and then boom, the final strongest card that they have to play, Yuji, reappears, it seems, at the very end of the last chapter of the month. Unless I'm getting totally freaked out and flicked out and trolled, it seems that they're actually having him take the stage, because otherwise it looks like Dabura is going to wreck everybody. So yeah, we'll see. This was meant to be like a 6-month-long serialization. I think we are actually, like, coming up to half a year in a bit. I don't know when exactly. So this is kind of it, I think. We're going to fight these aliens. We're going to see Yuji. We're going to have some questions answered. I assume it's still going to be kind of like a message of peaceful co-inhabitants at the end. But I don't know. There's still kind of this plot line of, like, the cursed spirits within Tokyo busting free and running loose that need some sort of resolution. We'll see. We'll see. All very interesting stuff. Having a lot of fun with this. Give it an S- for the month. And we will take a little break. Alright, next we are going to talk about the ultimate Exorcist, Kiyoshi, which is in deep to what kind of seems like both the meat and climax of the second big arc, the journey into the demon realm. It's basically all fighting this month. Beelzebub versus Bobo, Shuten versus Gaga, a few chapters of that, and then some backstory around Shuten, that he is a Maki, some sort of demonic beast, a subspecies of demon that is noted for being incredibly ruthless and uncontrollable and aggressive or whatever. He's like half demon, half human, so that kind of creates some interesting lore and mysteries or whatever. Basically, you know, things proceed just with awesome battling back and forth, nothing too surprising. I really do love the way that the action in the series is depicted. I've talked about that at length before, and lots of great examples of that here. This is like your very typical shonen big battles at the end of an arc type thing, you know. Everybody's kind of squared off with their opponents, and then one by one we'll get to see all these big fights. And that's fine. That's just fine. I would hope for something more ambitious going forward, you know. I hope that in their next arc it's a bit more of an adventure, maybe a bit more of a mystery. Before they get to the fighting, I think that would be a lot of fun. But whatever, I think they're executing on this, you know, very well. And like I said, I think the fights are a strong suit in this series. They're very unique, and they blend little bits of world building into it. So I'm like happy, but I'm not over the moon. It just kind of seems like this arc is gonna just wrap up with fighting, and with, of course, Kiyoshi being revived at some opportune time to stake his claim. So I'm already kind of getting more excited for the next arc than for this, and for the inter-arc adventure, setting up that next arc. But I am excited to see these final fight scenes too. I think they will be pretty enjoyable. That's really all I have to say about this one. Sometimes you just get a bunch of fights, and that's all good. We'll give it an A+. Next, let's talk about the hero, girl, and demon lord calling it quits. And to be honest, if I wasn't this olive jump reading psychopath that's decided to spend all this time on these projects, I probably would have called it quits with this series. Not really feeling this one. I think it's just a little too insubstantial. I get that, it's a gag comedy at its heart, so what am I expecting? But I just don't really find it that funny either. It just kind of feels like it's very quickly just running through all the beats and tropes, not really having much of a direction in mind, not really having any kind of special sauce or uniqueness to it. And also throwing in some like fan service and stuff, which is weird. Shows her in the bath for no reason. Pretty explicit, trying to get a couple booby votes maybe. I don't know how well this series is performing, but that never looks like the series of the move of a series that's confident, And then they go into this digression about how the demon lord could potentially turn back into a human, and that this is kind of like the end game of how the unresolved situation with him being the demon lord will be resolved. And then it's kind of implied that she might have like feelings for him, and that if he gets rehumanified, they're gonna like get together. And I don't really like that at all, because they really tried to set it up more like as a parent-child type relationship, where he's your kind of typical, atypical house husband, like the stay-at-home dad that is surprisingly domestic despite his exterior or reputation. There's a million such series, usually with like Yakuza, and that she's like his daughter in a sense, And then there's the mistrust and rivalry with her actual father. That's at least the direction that I thought it was going in. Now that it's like more of a love interest thing, I think it's very weird on a lot of levels. Just the sort of relationship they've been put into. And, the fact that he's like an immortal ancient being. The fact that, at least to me, he looks much more of an adult than her. Very weird, but whatever. We'll see if they actually pay that off, or if that was just kind of throwing something at the wall to see if it got any buzz or whatever. Then they bring back the alien from chapter 1. I did really like the introduction of aliens as like a funny X factor to your typical demon and hero story. But then they didn't really do anything with that, or do anything else that kind of like has that same sense of escalation or surprise. And then instead of like coming up with something like that, like introducing yet another third faction, yet another element of action or whatever, which has been totally absent from the series for a while, I think to its detriment. That gives the chapters a bit more of a punch, and is something where you can develop a bit more of a unique feel for the series versus all of the other kind of like supernatural slice of life series. They bring the alien back. That's kind of like the only idea they had. And the alien is in trouble, and they have to help out the alien, and it turns out their neighbor is raising the alien girl in kind of like another parallel strange relationship. They go for like a very sincere, wholesome kind of thing about how his life has expanded since he took her in, and really she's done more for me than I've done for her kind of feel. And it's not terrible, but I don't know, it's not like offensive at least. Just very plain, just not that anything new or fresh, and a lot of sentimentality that feels kind of unearned at this point. It feels like they're kind of trying to go for like kind of a cutesy almost Yotsuba-esque raising a child type of appeal, which I don't think they're really going to be able to pull off with any sort of depth or resonance. And the main plot of the two of them, I don't think is really going anywhere either, or if it is going somewhere, it's in a direction that I don't really like. So I'm just kind of left wondering, like, what is the point of this series? It feels like it's meant to be, your kind of lackadaisical slice of life, just comfy vibes, enjoy the moment. But it doesn't feel like substantial enough for that. Like, it doesn't hit me deep enough or feel warm enough for that. It's got all these other kind of strange abrasive elements too. And yet it can't really commit and go the whole way on its premise either. Not in a way that's like interesting to me. So I don't know. Not really feeling this one. We'll give it a C for the month. And we'll see what happens. I think there's interesting directions that it could go in. Like I said, the initial premise that it seemed to kind of promise, which is that the demon girl and the demon lord and hero girl are just buds now, and they're gonna like team up against a variety of other kind of silly tropey threats, and we get to see their interpretation of various tropey threats, and or maybe a plot line of them kind of being undercover and like helping out in crises, but also trying to maintain her life as just a normal high schooler. Those were kind of interesting to me, but it feels like very quickly they kind of just gave up on plot lines that are that ambitious, and it's more just kind of like messing around. I don't know. Whatever. It is what it is. Let's move on to The Mage Next Door, which was another very new series. This one I'm liking a little more. It does remind me a lot of Mashal in ways that I enjoy. I think it's striking a good balance so far between comedy stuff, character stuff, and then some good action scenes, and some world building too. This month actually had a couple really nice world building moments, kind of setting stakes for potentially future arcs. I don't think the series is performing particularly well. I wouldn't actually be surprised if this is one of the next ones to end up going, but they've got some ambitions, they've got some ideas, and I like that. The big arc up until the end of last month was resolved. The MC wins. He's still, unfathomably powerful compared to everyone else we've seen. Somewhat similar to Mashal too, but he gets sleepy, and this seems to be kind of his quirky weakness or whatever. The bad guy gets sent to the magic realm, where the kind of goddess of the magic realm uses a technique on him called June 31st and sends him to a day that doesn't exist. And it's a little psychedelic horror for you, where he is put into this kind of like non-world where he's in some sort of mental anguish and torture and stuff. And that I found kind of interesting. I like me a powerful good guy that has unsettling vibes and makes you wonder, how good are the good guys, Then the MC gets taken to the Mage Hunting Guild in the real world, this police force that's an anti-mage task force. They see a bunch of ancient relics from an ancient war between mages and humans. That's pretty interesting. They find out where the evil mages, pronounced it right like 5 times, are being warped into the real world, which I think is them kind of setting a route to a potential endgame if they need to wrap it up in a hurry. Totally fair. It felt like they were kind of just going full throttle into that kind of like final climactic showdown if they needed to, but then they take their foot off the gas, have like a totally diversion chapter, the very standard you have to pretend to date me request type thing. It was fun, it was silly, it was whatever. It sets up another villain for another kind of multi-chapter little arc, which I enjoy. So not too bad, but I think the series was more interesting and probably will be more interesting when it's playing with kind of higher stakes, getting the world building a little more involved, and just kind of like, I think, emphasizing the mysteriousness of the mage organization and the history between mages and humans and stuff. But yeah, I'm enjoying this one. I think the way they do kind of action and comedy is fun. It has this really pleasant, sketchy art style. All the characters are fun. I hope it has the chance to kind of show itself. Like Mashal, I think, had a very, very strong start. That does remind me of this a lot. But it was like a little goofier right off the bat. It had a lot of more overt comedy moments. Mash was such a beloved character, I think, right off the jump, that it built up a lot of goodwill and managed to have like a very, very long run. Even after I think it kind of lost the plot on what made it appealing in the first place. Here, I want them to, have the same chance, but like really build upon these foundations and not swerve too far into just generic battle shonen. We'll give it an A- for the month. Next, let's talk about Witch Watch, which is still crazy. The part 3 has just been so tense and action-packed and really just not what I'm used to in this series. I really have no idea how long it can possibly stay in this mode. Are we not going to have any comedic interludes? Is it just going to be like this all the way up until the end of the series? I have no idea. This whole month was just full of everything to do with the mission, setting up little plot details of, the characterization of the villains, some banter around them, their plans for, how will they hide from the villains, how will they confront them, under what circumstances should they engage. I like this kind of like tactical forethought feeling. It really feels like a mission, The pacing is really intense, really punchy, and yet I do feel like we're hunkering down for like a big arc that, every character is basically involved in this. There's a wide array of villains that they need to tackle, probably one at a time. Lots of rooms for twists and surprises, and this might not even be the finale, the showdown on the cruise ship. Like, there's no way we're getting out of this without the ancient witch or ancient warlock Jura being revived, right? So there needs to be some sort of showdown there too. It's all pretty intense, and it's not the mode I'm used to in the series, but it's a mode that they're handling very, very well. I think that Kenta Sensei at some point might want to consider just doing a no comedy series, no jokes allowed. I don't know. But here he strikes a really good balance. Like, there are small moments of comic relief in these chapters, and I really enjoy them, even though it does create a bit of tonal weirdness too. Like, when you see the villains all like bantering and doing shtick and stuff, it does sort of undermine the fact that it's like, oh, this is actually like a serious arc. They're fighting for the fate of the world, It's unclear to me like how we're supposed to really parse all of this. Anyways, we will give it an S- for the month. Really, really good stuff. This is such a crazy, exciting mode for the series to be in. All right, now we're going to talk about Blue Box, which was fantastic this month with the finale and aftermath of his battle against Kyo. Just scrolling around for my notes. I really like the badminton action in this series. I think it is one of the elements that it does best, They did have some really great badminton action here. I like that they really reflect on this match from the perspective of a lot of different characters. The manager girl sort of using it as a contrast to some of the areas in her life that she feels like are not where she wants them to be, like feeling like some of her relationships are superficial or shallow or whatever, and then contrasting that with the joy they have from sharing this hobby, how precious that is, It's a nice thing to reflect on. I have some competitive hobbies that I've shared with different friends throughout the years, and it is something I think really, really special. A friendship born of competition. And then, of course, Taiki beats Kyo, and I think they managed to pull off like a really impressive feat for sports shonen where like the protagonist is gonna win. There's situations where you just know the protagonist is gonna win. This is not gonna be the end of his third year badminton tournament arc, and you want the protagonist to win. That's already kind of a feat. Sometimes you end up with a protagonist that is actually not that fun to root for, but here, you know, I really like Taiki. I want to see him succeed. And yet, despite all of that, I also did feel kind of heartbroken when Kyo lost. I did feel like I really wanted them both to win somehow. I was so moved by his effort in this tournament, by their connection, by the symbolism of all of this. They hit you with the super, super sentimentality bomb of like a collage of a million panels in behind them, you know, summarizing their friendship and everything. Really nicely timed. I think just detonating that in the final moments of the match is beautiful. And then, you know, this lovely kind of aftermath where they're chilling in the park, playing with kids, having some cake, talking about just the idea of nostalgia. Do you guys feel nostalgia for this park? Do you remember when you were here before? But recognizing that, to an extent, it just feels different because they've changed so much. And in the end, Taiki vowing to be best friends with Hina, that's his way of meeting her feelings, which is heavy. I like that it wasn't just kind of a miracle he found a way for everyone to be happy type scenario, but he manages to respond to her feelings wholeheartedly and sincerely by saying, what this makes me realize is that I value you so much as a friend, and I want you in my life, and you're gonna be my best friend. I guess Kyo's not his best friend, whatever. But you're not gonna be my girlfriend, and I'm gonna make you okay with that. And it's like heavy, and you feel bad for Hina, but I think it's like the best way they could have handled it. They handled it with a lot of emotional maturity and with the weight that you would accept. And man, this is just like good messaging. This is just good messaging. Can you imagine how this scene would play out in Nue's Exorcist? Hino would grab Taiki's hand and shove it into her chest and be like, if your heart is beating, that means you love me instead of Chinatsu-sensei. And Taiki would go, whoa, wait a minute. It's so stupid. Okay, anyways, it's not about that. Great chapters. I really enjoyed this. I'm excited to see more of the badminton arc. Always love the sports action in the series. We will give it an S for the month. Alright, now let's talk about Ruri Dragon, which, talking about Sweeps Week, I feel like these guys got the KyoAni anime announced, and then we're like, alright, let's give them something to animate. We are building up to some very exciting times in the series. Her Draconification going through a spurt, where suddenly a whole bunch of symptoms start happening at once. She's not able to stay in school normally, and they find out that she has to meet a dragon. She is going to go meet with an actual factual full-blooded, full-bodied dragon, and that this will somehow help with her managing her symptoms of draconification. Crazy. I really hope that, you know, we get to episode 12 of the anime and we see an actual dragon. I don't know, it might be a little underwhelming otherwise. Which, you know, you can see, I get it's slice of life, it's the point, it's supernatural but down to earth, and all of the fantastical things you expect to see are kind of not really the focal point. Whatever, I want to see a dragon, it doesn't matter. But yeah, lots of really nice moments in these. I like when they have a Zoom call study session. Thought that was very cute. But they kind of just give us the double cliffhanger where one chapter ends with her being told, you have to meet a dragon. And then the next chapter ends with her heading out the door, presumably, to meet a dragon. And I had the sinking feeling that it might actually still get off-screened. That we're going to cut back to next chapter and she's going to be like, yeah, I met a dragon. It was crazy. You guys don't want to hear about that, right? I don't know. But yeah, exciting stuff. The series is definitely getting a lot of momentum in some exciting directions. I gotta think, you know, obviously I'm kind of joking about it. Oh, they need to come up with some stuff to animate. But when your series gets picked up by such an acclaimed studio like KyoAni, that's gotta weigh on you pretty heavily when you're drawing these chapters, right? Knowing that that's how it's ultimately going to be transformed and seen by a much wider audience. I don't know. We will see how it goes, where it goes. I'm pretty excited, though, for the anime, for the future of this series. And we got 2 out of 3 weeks this month with chapters, which is a really, really good pace for the series. Hopefully they can keep up that momentum, keep up that output, and we'll see a lot more of good old Ruri. We will give it an A for the month. Then moving on to Shinobi Undercover. They're fighting with this teacher turned traitor. Umineko, one of the side protagonists, is able to unleash his Kekai. It's a fire Kekai. They do this kind of like glazing of the secondary protagonist, you know. I think when they anticipate the series getting a long run. The series indeed, I think, is selling pretty well and probably will keep running for the foreseeable future, so why the hell not? The action sequences are good as always, and although at first I was kind of disappointed with the introduction of like the superpower Kekai, none of them have been like super interesting yet conceptually, but they do a pretty good job of like making action sequences where those feel impactful and exciting, and there's still good choreography and speed and, you know, punch kick action. I like a little line here too where they escape from the perilous situation, and Yotaka brings along the traitor teacher that they were fighting, and she's like, "Why did you rescue me?" And he's basically like, "I panicked. Do you think I can make a good decision in a crisis? I just grabbed you and ran." Which is fun. I like how they're kind of building in his character to these action moments. Then a whole bunch of setup that they decide that they're ultimately going to infiltrate the ninja family that she belongs to rescue her, because now she's failed in her mission. She'll probably get executed. And that kicks off to a very fun start. I like the pacing too, that they just get right into it and there's not some kind of tedious school life arc in between or something. The stakes are already high enough. This is all still kind of the payoff of this one character's arc, so they just went right into it, this rescue operation. And I like how chaotic it is right off the jump, that Yotaka is off his game. He's all flustered with the idea of Aoi getting him a present. And as a result, he is screwing up all sorts of stuff, alerting all sorts of people. They're hiding all of these bodies. And that, to me, is the start of a great arc with a bunch of mishaps. And they're on the back foot. And all of their planning and coordination is kind of out of the window. And then you get to see them improvise. And then you get to see like an emergent situation and stuff. And that, to me, is a lot more interesting. My big thing is, can they make it feel physical? The fact that all of this chaos is running around and unfolding within this one house that's full of ninja tricks and traps. Can they make it so we have scenes where, like, the physical presence of one element interferes with another element? People go flying through the wall and pop up in somebody else's battle. A plot element of him stashing a body he knocked unconscious is discovered in the middle of something else inopportune. Maybe part of the house catches on fire and that spreads to multiple different side stories. That kind of thing, that's what it's all about to me. That's when, like, these sorts of arcs, like, really take off for me. And I think they can do it. They just have to want to do it. I think they just have to have the instincts to know that that's what makes these types of stories more memorable and more fun. But we'll give it an A- for the month. It's really been quite solid lately. For a while, this series, it didn't do much for me. I wasn't really getting into it, but I think it's hitting its stride. I just really like how it does these sorts of action sequences, these sorts of arcs. Now we will talk about Someone Hertz. Probably the biggest success of 2025 that isn't named Jujutsu Kaisen. We had the end of kind of an arc that the whole series had been building up to up until this point. The listener Koishen. It was actually given much more attention than the actual Koishen at the end of Harukaze Mound, alas, but whatever. Our main character doing not so great in the finals, where she has to live quip to prompts being given on the radio. He runs over to support her, They show him listening to an actual real song in the Diegesis, this J-pop song featuring Creepy Nuts, which was fun to listen to, and it was fun to look it up on YouTube and see all the comments that are like, "Someone Hertz brought me here, hee hee hee." She ultimately loses. A very nice little sentimental moment where she finally lets her guard down and admits how much she cared about this and cries. Real good impact in that moment, you know? They knew just where to place that level of emotional impact. And that actually had the color cover of the magazine, which is pretty huge for a series like this. You know, series in this sort of genre don't get the cover too often. A new series like this, it's exciting to see it get the cover. So I think it's kind of killing it. This 1v1 rom-com action has flourished within Jump. Yeah, I don't know. I'm enjoying it. After that, we had kind of a more relationshipy type of chapter where it seems like they're kind of taking a more substantial step towards intimacy and stuff as they get all of these matching items based on the radio show that they like. Pretty cute conversation about the next round of the listener question, which is in 6 months. And to me, that was the series very deliberately stating, we are going to run for at least more 6 actual real world months, and you don't worry about the listener question chapter until then. We are going to take our time with, you know, events-based slice of life. Look forward to holiday chapters and summer chapters and everything. Look forward to their relationship slowly sparking deeper and deeper. And yeah, that's all fine with me. I'm really enjoying it. Again, I kind of have mixed feelings because I read this genre a lot. And I do think in terms of other more stellar examples of this genre, this is kind of middle of the pack. But it's not bad either. And it is a nice change of pace for Jump. So we'll give it a B+ for the month. Really solid stuff. Keep at it. I think they know when to hit the emotional punches, and that's the best thing for them. You know, they're not overly concerned with keeping it light, but know when to bank on you really caring about the characters, and that's what's going to carry you far. All right, now let's talk about One Piece. As always, I already talked about One Piece at length if you go watch the individual chapters. But we had some really crazy stuff here. Loki battling with Harold, who had been demonified. The final climactic moment of the flashback, the moment which the entire flashback had been building towards, where Loki tearfully has to kill Harold. Some really crazy choices with paneling and big spreads and other kind of impactful moments being reflected in the page structure itself. It's wonderful to me that after 1,170 chapters, Oda is still excited to find opportunities like that, excited to still relish the fact that this is a manga of all things, you know, like still play with paneling, still play with page presentation to make an impactful point, not just kind of going through the motions, not just doing the defaults. Truly peak stuff right there. And then we return to present day after some very intriguing but inconclusive lore drops, such as saying that Elbaf is D, whatever the hell that means. There's kind of some strangeness around, I think, the segue out of the flashback, insofar as that it was so detailed and thorough up until a point, but then critical things like what ended up capturing Loki, how he ended up in that state, and why, you know, nobody kind of like, I don't know, like there's a lot of kind of things that were kind of glossed over a little bit right at the end that made me unclear if we were still going to see like a couple more scenes later of this sort of flashback, or if I was just meant to kind of infer, because you can kind of infer everything, but at the same time it's like nothing else was left to inference, you know. But yeah, really nice stuff. As I said, I already talked about it at length in those other videos. You can check it out there. Here I'll just give it an S+, very happily. Really good stuff. Cannot wait for 2 more days. 2 more, 3 more, whatever. Get a new chapter. That's great. Okay. Next, let's talk about Gonron Egg, one of the newer series. One that I'm enjoying quite a bit. This kind of dark fantasy tone I've been praising at length. Here, they double down into the darkness where the human liberation guy, this soldier in the human liberation army, shows up, and you think, finally it's an ally. But he's actually kind of fucked up too. He's been eating the hearts of the enemy to become stronger. He tries to kill Gonron and Alma right off the jump, but is eventually persuaded not to. Gonron, and him team up to battle the final threat of the Dracarch they just dispatched. So he wins a bit of the trust. But there's still, like a creepy vibe from him, and there's a sense that not all of the humans will be kind, and maybe he'll be reasonable, but other of his subordinates won't, and, just this kind of gray amorality where everybody is on some sort of spectrum of self-interest and selflessness that I think, again, just kind of adds an element of danger to everything, which I really enjoy and feels very unique. So they go to the Human Liberation Army village. That was really cool, seeing a world of peace where human society, they're trying to recreate it kind of from first principles. Nice little moments there. I think that's kind of important to show, like, another side to this. This is what they're all fighting for. It has kind of this real dark, dreamy feeling, though, where everything is still a little uncanny, and you're not really sure if we're meant to be suspicious of anything, or if there is some dark secret hidden here, or maybe it's more just the contrast you're supposed to have between this and the rest of the world is just a little jarring and dissociative. They have an audience with the Supreme Commander, who's also very strange and freaky and has been feasting on the Dracarchs for the entirety of the war. Again, just everything meant to be very disarming, very unpleasant, very creepy vibes. I'm loving it. I really, really hope this series can get off the ground, because I think it will thrive in sagas, where there's not just the battle right away, but a deep exploration into some horrific lands, and introducing a small assortment of characters at the beginning of an arc and kind of seeing their stories play out. And basically, the more this can kind of ape the story structure of Berserk, I think the better. And Berserk, I think, also really hit its stride when it broke out of the more monster of the week type things and had the long story of, like, Griffiths and Guts' flashbacks, stuff like that. Now, I don't expect it to be that substantial, but something that has that kind of, like, weight and ambition, something that, really feels like the characters went on a journey. I think that combined with this tone would be really, really something. I hope it really gets that opportunity. I'm kind of skeptical. I don't know. I don't think it's doing so well. Just everything in Jump is having such a hard time finding a foothold right now. But we can hope. We'll give it an A for the month. Next, we will talk about Akane-banashi, which was so good this month. Oh my gosh. Going in a direction that I never thought it would, where instead of seeing like a variety of performances with a variety of stories, we are zooming very far in on particularly the story of the God of Death, which we had seen Shiguma perform in what I think is one of the best performances in the entire series. Now we're trying to see all the different spins on it that different performers have, so that Akane can kind of reach her own interpretation, find her own God of Death. We find out that Shome, even though he's like such a button down, by the book, timing his performances out to the second kind of guy, does a God of Death performance that is like pure comedy. It's just silliness and madcap and bizarreness that he learned from his father, who is this outrageous provocateur in a time when Rakudo was meant to be refined and clever and witty. He instead went for broad, silly comedy, but that he was the one that taught it to Shiguma, and Shiguma's, of course, is a very intense, very harrowing, very haunting, kind of disarming God of Death. Akane herself tries to perform it, but isn't able to very easily conjure an image of the god of death itself. Instead, she focuses too much on relating to the protagonist, the victim of the story, indeed, when really the power of the story is in embodying the god of death for its brief appearances at the beginning and the end. She's trying to forge some new image of it. And then we get this like very open mystery that I'm really, really curious about. And I'm very curious if anybody watching this has any thoughts, where it seems like there is an elusive answer that all of these different god of death stories are pointing to like one identity. Some conflation of all these different ideas that she feels is sort of manifest in Shiguma's performance. And there's this amazing shot where she gets a glimpse of it, and its eyes are presented in this just harrowing standalone one page that mirrors perfectly the ones where we've seen Akane's eyes when she's going totally god mode, sight without sight. It's an awesome, awesome parallel. And then, of course, you know, we can't just sit around contemplating this. The story is also plunging forward with new events. And we find out that the eternal enemy, that bastard with the afro, reappears. That he will be a liaison between the Rakugo Association and the upcoming Ishoka, which Akane has been tasked alongside Kaisen to book. So there's going to be some sort of showdown with him. That's very exciting. Of course, in the situation where they're trying to navigate between comedy and horror, he is the perfect embodiment of that. A guy that is the king of laughs in Rakugo, but of course has been in just a persistent negativity and antagonist and real bastard in the series so far. But yeah, what is the God of Death? There's all these hints that it's originally a Western story, that it has comedic elements, that it has something almost disarming and cute about it, and yeah, that it is horror, it is a scary story, that it is about death. I don't know. I could see it being anything as heavy as it embodies Japan's fears after World War II of their own morality as a nation, to Shiguma reflecting Captain Rakugo's teachings, the previous Shiguma, in his own conceptualization of someone who holds the threads of life and death. It could be like the interference of other art forms that have made Rakugo not so popular relative to like Netflix or whatever. It could be anything. But I think it's something. It's not just going to be like, ooh, it's a spooky face. It's going to have some sort of like meaning, you know? It's going to have some sort of analogous representation that Akane is going to like clue into and unlock, and that's going to be like the heart of her performance. So I'm really, really excited about that, but I'm already like super, super pumped for these chapters. Really, really, really enjoyed this. This prolonged focus on one story I think is really cool. And yeah, I don't know. I'd really open to other people's suggestions because I have no idea where it's going to go from there. I just thought of 3 ideas off the dome, but I think I could think of like 100 that feel all roughly equally compelling to me. So we will see. I'm very, very excited for it. We will give it an S+ for the month. And then finally, let's talk about Sakamoto Days, which is seemingly very much speed running to the ending. I knew we were in the final saga, but I thought it would be a very long saga, just because we have so many good guys and so many bad guys that all promise to square off. Thought we'd have a lot of like choreographed fights and stuff. And indeed, for a while, it was taking it pretty slowly with a lot of fights around side characters and stuff. And I don't know if it was just the reception of that was poor, and so they decided to kind of hit the gas pedal a little more. But at any rate, we are in now what might be like the final battle. Sakamoto versus Slur, aka X, aka Yuzuki. After that person, that collection name beats Akira in what was also a very good fight scene. You know, the director guy back in action, trying to make it interesting, trying to find good theming. I like that when he says it's a little too plain. Suddenly they bust into a chapel where a wedding is happening and like a giant wedding cake gets wheeled in and stuff. Really, really silly. Really, really crazy, but, you know, the sort of stuff we love from Sakamoto Days. Then, of course, Sakamoto himself bursts into the scene, bringing his signature style of fighting back, which I think is still the best part of this whole manga and something that I had missed. With his new secret weapon, if you remember, there was a plot for a while where Sakamoto was contemplating getting kind of his signature weapon, and it is a ballpoint retractable pen that they sell at the Sakamoto shop that he uses to effortlessly gain the upper hand in the fight, save Akira. It's moving very, very fast. It's like, what the hell is happening with any of the other characters, any of the other fights that we set up? We could start this battle and then return to them, but I think that in a way would also feel a little flat. Given that so much momentum had gone into this already. It could be that after Uzuki is defeated, you know, we refocus on the real enemy, which could be like the new head of the JCC or some unknown threat or any number of things. Since Uzuki is supposed to be kind of somewhat of a sympathetic presence, I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of a redeeming thing for him. But this also could just be it. I don't know. Like, maybe they just decided, screw it. I've had enough of this. I don't want to actually go back and go through all those other characters I introduced and have them all do fight scenes and stuff. But from a certain perspective, yeah, that's like a lot of chapters, man. That's a substantial endeavor. You really don't want to do another 5 volumes of this series to go through all those fights? Okay, fine. At least go out on a high note, and so far this battle has been pretty sweet. I really, really like the scene where he comes up with a plan to disarm and dispel the Takamura persona by tricking Uzuki to follow him into a house of mirrors. Then he detects his own bloodlust, and the Takamura persona attacks itself. I thought that was like very, very clever and a very, very cool depiction. But yeah, I don't know. So that's one persona down. They're closing in on Uzuki himself, and then what else happens? That's it, right? Crazy, crazy stuff. I'm enjoying it, though. We'll give it an S- for the month. And I think that's it. I think we've talked about all of them. This was a bit more of a physically exhausting endeavor than I anticipated. I think just because I was so sick for so long, and I'm still not at 100%. But I'm glad I did it, because there's nothing in the world that makes me more rejuvenated than reading Weekly Shonen Jump on a Sunday morning, and I definitely wanted to do this before I read the first February chapters. So yeah, this was our last tier list. And then check this out, man. Talking about sweeps week. This is definitely the most series we've ever had in the S tier, plus a newcomer to the P tier. Very, very high rankings, almost across the board. Loving where the magazine's at right now. I just kind of wish that more series got longer runs. It feels like we're in kind of a dry spell of stuff really getting off the ground. But we'll see. We'll see how the rest of this batch of new series goes. Got 2 new series starting soon. That's always exciting. But bye-bye for now. See you then. Bye-bye.